Aye.
Yes, Chair Pounds, I think we're ready to go when you are.
All right, great. Thank you, Desiree. This is the Ways and Means Committee meeting, 6 o'clock on Tuesday, May 19th, a virtual meeting due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock and acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Nicole, you want to do a quick roll call, make sure we have quorum?
Absolutely. Councilmember Popson,
Here.
Councilmember Streetman,
Here.
Councilmember Moy,
Here.
Councilmember Bell,
Here.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Mayor Carroll,
Here.
Chair Pounds.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Our first order of business is approval of previous meeting minutes. We've got 3 sets. One was a regular meeting we had on February 18th, which seems like a lifetime ago. The special budget workshop number 2 on March 12th, and the special budget workshop number 3 on April 16th. Hopefully you've had a chance. That was in your packet. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I so move.
Rusty?
Second.
Second, Kevin. Thank you very much. Any comments, questions, additions, changes?
That's a motion to approve all 3.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor. Any questions, comments, edits? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, Nicole, we need to do roll call on that.
Just for,
Can we vote by unanimous? Can we vote by unanimous consent?
I don't know. I won't know that. I don't think anybody else knows that. Sorry.
All right, fire away.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chair Pounds,
Aye,
all in favor.
thank you,
Thank you.
Nicole. Next item is citizens' comments. We have about 21-ish pages, give or take, of citizens' comments that will be attached to the minutes once the minutes are approved. So they'll be online that somebody can look at. Our 4th item of business is financial statements. And Ron, if you want to share this, that'd be great. Debbie, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can take us through the package, please.
All right. Can everybody hear me? All right. So just a few words about the April results. Big picture, compared to last year this time, year-to-date general fund revenues are up $396,000 over the prior year. Total city revenues are up $59,000 over the prior year after making a timing correction. On the expenditure side, April year-to-date general fund expenditures are down $49,000 from last year, and total city expenditures are down $435,000 from last year. Also, on the cash side, the city has $21 million in cash deposits at the bank as of April 2020 versus 18.5 this time last year. So as of the end of April, the city's in a favorable position with respect to revenues, expenditures, and cash compared to April 2019. That being said, of course, the city does expect significant negative financial impacts due to COVID-19. But because of the lag time between when the economic transaction occurs and when the resulting tax or fee is collected, the worst of those financial impacts won't be felt by the city until May, June, and July. The forecast that's included in this document and in budget draft 3 includes or reflects a 3.8 million decline in total revenues. That forecast was meant to be conservative, and the fact that we've already begun economic activity again in mid-May, it means it's very likely the city will beat those projections. So the forecast for FY20 and FY21 will be updated in June when more information is available. In response to the projected revenue declines related to COVID-19, the city went back and forecasted some additional expenditure declines. Quite a bit of expenditure decline was already projected over the FY20 budget related to timing on the public safety building spending, but an additional 1.4 million was identified that could be reduced, aimed at offsetting the COVID-related revenue declines. 1 million of that is just in operating expenses throughout the city's budget, and another 388 in reduced personnel costs. That's due to vacancies that are eliminations of a position and extended vacancies in several of the departments. That's all I have on the financial statements as a whole. I wanted to go through the tourism schedules. You can see here that, and this schedule might look different from what you received in your packet, because the packet materials included numbers in that COVID forecast column. That was an initial projection, but you'll all recall that for the budget draft 3, we took a very conservative approach and just assumed that there would be no revenue associated with tourism from March through July. So anything that we receive in March and April, and you can see that for this schedule, this is municipal accommodations fee. We've already made collections. Those revenues have been received. So we're already ahead of the game on municipal A tax. And then moving forward, state A tax, we received a payment, $88,000. No payment from Charleston County passed through, although I do expect we will see one more this year. Hospitality tax for March. This would relate to February. Restaurant activity was $12,956. The forecast was 0. And then the beach preservation fee again, over $30,000 collected against a forecast of 0. One other thing I want to mention is that City Council early on in the emergency orders gave an additional amount of time for city bills to be paid. So folks like restaurateurs and business owners can defer their payments of hospitality tax and business license fees up through July. So some of this decline that we're seeing is a timing difference only, and it will be collected, especially on the business license side. I think we've had very strong revenue flows since March, and we'll likely see those continue. So while there are some, absolutely, we've lost revenue on parking, some hospitality tax, and recreation revenues, particularly due to the rec center just being closed. Those revenues we won't recover, but some of the revenue reductions that we're seeing is just timing, and they will be collected eventually. Any questions so far?
Debbie, Chair, if I may.
Yep, John.
Just a quick question about the almost 21 million we have in reserves. Do you know what percentage of that is unrestricted?
So if you add up real quick, $12 million is totally unrestricted. So 57%.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor Carroll. Desiree, can you take him off mute? Oh, thank you. Perfect. Hang on. Jimmy, you're still on mute, Jimmy.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Chair and Debbie, thank you very much. It appears that, our forecast for the rental accommodations is not as dire as we thought it was going to be. And talking to some of our rental agents out here, they've had to negotiate rentals and stuff, but we were thinking it was going to be a good bit less. So I'm really kind of glad to see what we're getting. And it's gonna
Absolutely.
do nothing but improve.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my end of my comment. Thank you.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Mayor, I
Good news.
totally agree with your comment. And if you think about, to Debbie's comment about the timing, I think May and June could be significantly less than what we realized, in April. But I'm like you, it's so far so good. I'm glad we did a real conservative budget at this point. But sorry, Debbie.
Yeah, I only see an upside with respect to the forecast.
Other questions, Susan?
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask this. However, I would like to hear from our city administrator and our chief of police as to whether I believe we had some frozen positions. Remind me if those are public safety positions that were included in that. And do we have what we need to get through the summer, which looks like it's going to be a busy summer, as far as what we need for patrolling and making sure that we are getting all of the ticket revenue that
Mhm.
we should be getting.
Yeah, you are correct. One of the decisions that we quickly made when this COVID-19 pandemic started happening was to freeze some of the vacancies that we had. The intent was to freeze any non-essential vacancies. However, we froze, everything and any vacancies that were going to be filled were going to be based on discussions of the department heads and myself. And we started the discussions a couple weeks ago about starting to look at BSOs, beach service officers. We understood that that was a priority that we needed to fill, and we have started that process. My screen just changed. Where is Susan? Okay, here you are. So we have hired one new BSO. We're in the process of interviewing a couple other folks. Some of the other positions in the police department have not yet been filled. We have some assumptions in the forecast, and those are conversations that Chief Cornett and I are talking about, or we're having currently about timing. And we'll certainly make sure that whatever the police department needs to be able to safely operate through the summer, they will have. But yes, there were some initial decisions that were made, and everything was up for consideration. And those are some of the discussions that we're currently having internally.
Okay, great. I mean, I think we should be very proactive on that front.
Absolutely.
Other questions on so far? Debbie, go ahead. Keep going.
All right, real quickly, I'll touch on the 2 project worksheets, public safety building repair. This project is within budget and on schedule. We've had some expenses paid in April, mostly related to relocation costs for the police and fire folks into the trailers. Next page is the drainage phase 3. About 18,000 spent in April on engineering and design costs associated with the design and permitting for the small but high impact projects in the basin and the outfall project. And that's all I have, unless anybody has any more questions.
Questions for Debbie? Want to real quick, Debbie, thank you as always, but I know some of you have seen these numbers, some of you haven't, but just for residents and anybody else listening, or make sure we heard some of what Debbie said, about $1.5 million in expenses, have been reduced out of the fiscal 20 budget. About $1 million, roughly same number, about $1.3 million, $1.4 million has been cut from the fiscal 21 budget. So I want to be sure people hear that loud and clear before we get to the fiscal 21 budget discussion. So Debbie, as always, thank you for your work and crazy amount of hours to get us to this point. Any final
Sure.
questions for Debbie on the April results? No. All right. So I'd like to make a point of order motion to reorder the agenda and move the first item in new business before we have the budget discussion, old business. So I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mayor, thank you. Any discussion, questions? All those in, sorry, Nicole, this new pass, man, I'm not digging it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chair Pounds,
Aye.
all in favor?
Very good. Thank you very much. So we have some folks with us. I'm going to turn it over to John Moy to introduce kind of this topic and our guest this evening. So John, take it away, please, sir.
Sure. Yeah. We had Bob O'Neill and Kendra Stewart from the Riley Center for Livable Communities present to the Personnel Committee. God knows when. But
Lifetime.
in 2020, I think it was in our February meeting. And they presented a proposal for leading us through the strategic planning process and getting our community to a place where we'd be able to, offer a degree of transparency and vision to the community as to what we're doing as leaders and what we want to do with the city. And when I say we, I mean we as a community, not we as a council. And so in personnel, we were there was unanimous consent that we wanted them to present to council their plan for moving forward. I'm thrilled with the approach that they're taking. It reflects the best practices that you see in corporate and municipal worlds. And so I'll hand it over to them. They'll speak much more eloquently about the process, but I'm sorry, Chair, did you have something to add? Or I don't know if the city administrator has anything else, but I know they've got a really clear, concise presentation as to the process that they want to take us through.
Hey, John, just real quick for our council members and department heads, when Ron's sharing a screen, I can only see like 4 of you. So if you have a question, you're just gonna have to speak up because I can't see hands being raised as we're walking through this presentation. So sorry, John.
Not at all.
Good evening. My name is Kendra Stewart. I am a faculty member at the College of Charleston and the director of the Riley Center for Livable Communities. Our executive in residence, Bob O'Neill, is with us this evening as well. And in a minute, I'll allow him to introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his experience and why he's very qualified to work on this project with us. The Riley Center at the College of Charleston is an interdisciplinary initiative of the college using the resources, the faculty, staff, and students to work with communities and nonprofits to help build capacity and creating more livable communities throughout South Carolina. So we really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight and present a proposal for working with you on a strategic plan. Just for a little bit of background purposes, we have worked with about 30 or 40 different communities throughout South Carolina in the last few years on either strategic planning or some type of planning or evaluation type of project. So we are very invested in helping our local governments work on this effort. Bob, would you like to introduce yourself and then maybe quickly go through our process?
Thank you, Kendra, and good evening, everyone. As Kendra indicated, I'm the executive residence at Riley Center. Prior to that, I was the executive director of the International City County Management Association in Washington, D.C., which is the professional association for city, county, and town managers around the world. Prior to that, I was the president of the National Academy of Public Administration, which is a congressionally chartered think tank. And I have some operational local government experience. I was the county executive in Fairfax County, Virginia, and city manager in Hampton, Virginia. And on the private sector side, I ran a consulting practice in Virginia for the predecessor of PricewaterhouseCoopers. It was a strategic planning practice, and I was senior vice president for public finance for a financial services firm, and we did financial advising to local governments mostly in the Southeast. So with that is a little bit of a background. What I'd like to do is just walk you through our approach. Ron, why don't you go to the third slide, if you could. There you go. Back up one. There you go. So I'm going to walk through the methodology, which is a little bit on the left-hand side of this slide. But what I wanted to focus is the three things that we want to ensure as part of the process. The first is that you are, as a city council, engaged throughout the process, and our objective really is that not only will you be aware of what that process is and the content of the plan itself, but that you'll own it at the end. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we will connect with you at sort of each of the major phases, so that you are again both aware but also own sort of the product at the end of the day. The second is one of the huge challenges is to make sure that we identify the resources that are going to be necessary, some of which are probably you have and some of which you may have to acquire over time in order to carry out the strategies and tactics that will be inherent in the plan. And the third, and probably the most important, is to try to make sure we link it to your operating and capital budgets and your comprehensive plan. So there's a linkage throughout. So not only for the standpoint of just accountability for you and the staff, but also clarity from the community standpoint about how all these things sort of work together. So Ryan, if you can go to the next slide. So this is the standard strategic planning process methodologies. We'll begin with an environmental scan. We'll develop in partnership with you and the staff a vision and mission statements, and then start to work on the strategies and tactics that are going to be necessary to carry out the things that you want to accomplish, and then focus primarily on implementation issues. How do we align these, and how do you get the resources to do that? And then finally, who's going to do it and how will you know? So that's the standard sort of process that we use. Most of you probably have seen this. It'd be interesting. What would be today's environmental scan is going to be quite different than what we would have done if it was been in November and December. So we'll start to look at the things that are going to drive the issues that you're going to have to face, some of which are demographic, some of which are the resources that are available. Obviously, in today's world, what's happening in terms of COVID-19 and its effect on the economy, and things like travel and tourism and hospitality and all those things will have tremendous impact on how we sort of focus the next few years in looking at the issues that you're going to face. You can go to the next one. So the next one then is to sort of focus on strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities, trying to identify the things that are really your opportunities and the things that are going to be the obstacles that you're going to have to overcome to achieve the kind of direction and community that you want. And we'll go through probably a substantial amount. As I said, this will probably look quite different as we start to do this than it would have been if we'd have been doing it in the fall. So it's going to be an interesting exercise, because I suspect even those who've completed recent strategic plans are sort of stepping back to think about all the threats and opportunities that are presented by virtue of what we are experiencing today. And then we'll develop a vision statement working with you and the staff. In a mission statement, sometimes I'll get questions about what the difference in those things are. We could talk about that if that's a question for you, but we find it helps to align both where you want to go in terms of aspiration, and then linking it to the mission of the City of Isle Palms organization and structure. And then obviously, then we're going to start to focus on the strategies and tactics. And the important point I think we want to make with this is that we're going to try to deal with not everything that the city is going to do or is doing today, but try to focus on the things that are most strategically important to you to accomplish what you want Isle of Palms to be. So it won't cover everything that you do or want to do, but it will try to focus on the things that are the most significant and will drive you to where you want to be as a community. And then, as I mentioned, the implementation plan is how do you identify the resources, where do you attain them, and how do you utilize them? Is it going to be an important sort of exercise? And we'll work with Desiree and the staff very closely to try to present something to you that links all of these strategies to something that actually is achievable. And then the last is, as I said, one of the things that always sort of is problematic is trying to figure out how you link all of the things that you're required to do as a city, comprehensive plans, the operating capital budgets, and the work plans of the departments. How do you sort of align those so that they're supportive of what you're trying to do? And the resources are strategically positioned to try to achieve the things that are the most important to you. So that's essentially the outline of what we're trying to do. I just want to reiterate our approach is to try to work very closely with Desiree and the staff, and to try to make sure that at each stage of that methodology that you're very comfortable with what's in it, how we got there, and that you will own it at the end of the day. So I'm happy to answer your questions. I'm sure Kendra is as well.
Desiree, anything else to add to or John, to the process or timing and such?
Oh, go ahead, John.
No, my comment is just that I significantly appreciate the steps that are involved to ensure that we're considering and bringing in voices from all of council and all of the community throughout the process. And I think that's really important that when I said that we're crafting our vision, it's not ours as a council, it's ours as a community. And I think that obviously they're experienced and they've done this many times before, and they understand what it takes to get the voices from the community heard and to bring those into all of the building blocks and the foundations that will ultimately give us a strategic plan that we can build upon as we, throughout the years, having a roadmap and a vision of where we're trying to go.
I want to ask a question, and maybe Bob or Kendra can expand. And we did talk a bit about this during personnel. One is, what does community engagement look like? Here at the Isle of Palms, we have a community that's incredibly engaged and will want to be part of this process. And we want that to happen because that helps for the community to have buy-in in the process and buy-in in the product. So if you can expand a little bit of how community engagement looks like in a process and strategic planning process. And also the other question was in terms of timing. We did talk about there's a recommendation that we don't spend too long on this process, because then people start losing, I guess, the vision, or losing the momentum. So if you can speak to what the recommended time frame for this would be appreciated.
So maybe I should let Kendra start off on the community engagement piece, and I'll expand on it, and then we'll talk a little bit about timing. So Kendra, do you mind?
Sure, no, that sounds good. Well, one thing we know for sure is that community engagement today looks a little bit different than it did just a few months ago. And there are a couple of things I think we could do to address that here. And first, I know you all have recently been actively engaging your community and getting input on various topics. And I think it would be important to incorporate that input that you've already received in a meaningful way. Other things that we could do with you all, with the support of staff, is, right now, at least in the next few months, it seems like people are not going to be comfortable engaging a lot in space together, particularly in large groups. So we could do some virtual meetings that would allow for input. We could do some type of electronic survey with open-ended questions to capture some qualitative and quantitative data. Generally, what we do with community engagement is try to do some focus groups targeting different neighborhoods or communities throughout the city or the town. And it's hard to say right now if that will be possible in the next few months, but of course, we would go by whatever Isle of Palms standards are set regarding, social distancing or bringing people together. But I think there are a lot of ways in which, after talking with you all and your staff, that we could determine which ones would be best to reach out to the folks, what people best respond to in Isle of Palms, as well as maybe targeting some areas and groups of folks who you don't often usually hear from. So Bob, do you want to add anything and maybe mention the timeline?
Yeah, I would just say one of the important things I think Kendra mentioned is to be able to capture what you've already gathered. So people don't feel that that's been lost somewhere and you're starting from scratch. And so to be able to capture that and then to be able to then engage stakeholders that's additive to that, not in substitute to that. So you want people to feel that all of the other processes that you've engaged them on aren't lost in the process itself, and that you're building upon the things that you've already done. In terms of timing, this is interesting because usually I have a very standard answer of that, because you want to capture the momentum and not lose that by having this thing go on for a very, very long time. But we're in sort of a unique situation here in terms of being able to engage people and how you're going to bring people together to have the conversations that you want. I would say we'd still try to do this in a 4 to 6 month time frame, which I think keeps the effort focused. It keeps people engaged in the process, and hopefully then provides an opportunity for you then to link it again to the decisions you're going to have to make on things like capital budgets and operating budgets and those kind of things. But we're going to probably have to play a little bit of it by ear, just because of the complications of bringing people together and how that's going to be different than what we've had to do in the past, for sure.
Hey, Mayor, you have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Bob and Kendra, number one, you can see my College of Charleston diploma behind you. Kendra, I doubt you were even here when I graduated, but under your process, you talk about strengths, weaknesses, and threats. Have you ever considered the unprecedented pandemic as a threat?
Yeah, there's something in the strategic planning methodologies called the Black Swan. You may have seen that term used now in the media. And what that means is having in the strategic planning a part of the process that goes, what if our assumptions are wrong? What if our assumptions somehow are substantially changed? What happens to the unprecedented or the unanticipated event? So yeah, I mean, if you want to take the time to do that, and I always encourage people to do that, whether we pick the pandemic as that, but one of the things is what would be totally disruptive to your assumptions that you're making, and what would you do to react to those? And so people sometimes skip that step because they just think it's not worth the time and effort to do it. I will tell you, all the way back to the beginning of the planning practice that I had with then Coopers and Lybrand, that was one of the things we almost always insisted both public sector and private sector folks do, is to take the time to say, what if we're wrong about all these assumptions?
Thank you.
Coopers and Lybrand, man, that's a blast from the past.
It is, isn't it?
Mr. Moy.
We covered this in personnel, and I think it would be helpful for the rest of, anybody watching and the rest of council to Kendra or Bob, if you could weigh in on the difference between a strategic plan and the comprehensive plan that we already have in place, and help us understand why it's important to have this to complement what we've already done.
Kendra, you want to start, or you want me to start?
I'll let you start, Bob.
Okay, so the comprehensive plan is a complementary document to the strategic plan. It's usually driven, the elements are driven by statutory requirements in terms of what's included in the comprehensive plan and the time frame from which you do it. What I suggest to folks is the difference is that strategic plans mean exactly that. They are not time dependent. They are what are the issues that are strategically important to you. They could be things that are 20 years in dimension, or they could be things you got to do tomorrow. And so that's quite different than the comprehensive plan. It also tends to have far more operational components in the strategic plan than in the comprehensive plan. So you're actually trying to link it to actionable items that you're going to be able to deal with. And so the comprehensive plan, again, you want it linked, and you want the comprehensive plan to hopefully frame parts of the strategic plan, but they are not the same document.
Randy?
Yeah, I didn't know that it's very, very welcome process. We've been talking about this for a long time. Done a bunch on the corporate side. My questions are more around engagement. These are living processes, breathing processes. They never end. I mean, So the question is more specific to the engagement. What should we and the public expect as sort of the end product from this specific engagement? Because at some point it's a handoff to us in the community. And I'm just trying to set an expectation for when we're through engaging with you, what do we have and where do we go from there?
So if I understand your question, I mean, I think what you're going to have is an aspirational vision statement and then a series of strategies that you hope are going to take you to that place. That's what you're going to have, is that in that document then will be linked to the actionable things like budgets and capital improvement plans and all of those kinds of things. So the purpose here is to try to link that aspiration that often we talk about in engagement processes with stakeholders and community members to something that actually looks like this is how we're going to get there. And that linkage is what I think makes this a valuable process. And so we'll talk about it probably as we go through this, how one links it in the budget. But often what we do is suggest to have an appendix to the budget that takes each of the strategic planning items and pulls from the budget all of those things that are going to be linked to those particular elements, so you can track those over time. The second is that and I like your terminology, that it is a living document, and so we're going to have a process where we can continually update it if the assumptions change.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Streetman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I tell you, I was impressed by Bob and Kendra's presentation in Personnel Committee back in February when they presented to us. And one of the things I brought up in my old corporate days is many times you had strategic plans that tended to just, after a while, they got stale. They sat on the shelf. No one really was working that document. And to Councilman Bell's point too, it being a living document, if we put something in place that we can have regular monitoring, reporting, back to council, back to the community with everybody involved, that will be nothing but just a real strength for us as a community. There's a number of communities out here in South Carolina, and I'm sure Bob could list a number of them that he's worked with, that have good, viable strategic plans in place and have made some amazing progress. So that's a statement and a question, I guess, Bob, to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what we suggest is there is some sort of reporting requirement that's developed. It's comes to an agreement between you and Desiree about how you want to do it. Some people do it on a quarterly dimension. I do know some that do twice a year. And I'll use the term loosely here, a retreat where they focus on just the strategic plan and the progress. Because what happens often is you get lost in the day-to-day stuff, right? The things that you got to do at every meeting. So taking time to devote to where are we, what progress we've made, what obstacles have we identified now, and how we are going to overcome them. So, I mean, I think part of that will design to meet your need on how you want to do it. But I would echo that what you need is some sort of structured process, because otherwise the day-to-day stuff just overwhelms you.
Thank you.
Hey, a quick question. Kendra, this may be for you. Is this process y'all walk through, is it primarily directed for municipalities, nonprofits? I mean, have y'all done corporate, kind of a mix of everything, or what's been your client?
We have worked quite a bit with nonprofits and local governments, and actually have done a little bit with state agencies as well. We do not generally work with private entities. So, but however, I think Bob would argue that the process is very similar. However, when you're dealing with nonprofits and local governments, there's a much greater emphasis on the outreach and the external piece of this, rather than as much as there would be often in a private organization.
Susan.
Thank you. I was looking for it and I don't see information about costs in the packet. Maybe I missed it, but if you could give us an idea of whether there are options or what the range is.
I can answer that, Councilmember Smith. we received a proposal from the College of Charleston from the Riley Center for $15,000, which is what we had initially budgeted for this process. I think that working with the College of Charleston and leveraging some of the, their resources and, serves the city well. Our plan was to present the proposal to you all and the plan and the process. And if it is the will of the group to continue to present that proposal to City Council for approval next Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. And you said 15, not 50,
Yes, ma'am.
right? Okay.
There
Thank
was
you.
a little hiccup in the Wi-Fi. I'm with you.
Just want to make
Oh,
sure.
15, yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? John, anything? Oh, sorry, Kevin.
Just to follow up on the cost, I guess if we go to quarterly or biannual or annual updates with this group, I'm sure there's additional cost to that.
It would depend on what it was that you're looking for. Exactly, if there was a whole new process involved, or, there are certain things, we would certainly work with you all. And, if it's just coming in for some advising or facilitating, I'm sure we could arrange that at, pro bono. But if there was more time or resources needed, we could certainly create a proposal that you all could give us some feedback on, and we could negotiate.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Kevin. John or Desiree, any last commentary? John, you good? Desiree, anything last comments or next steps? I guess council meeting's the next step.
Do we need a
Correct,
motion
yes.
before
Yes,
council?
we do need a motion to recommend to council. It's the same group, but just procedurally, it would help. Yeah, I think we're all excited about starting with this process. We've been talking about it for quite some time. COVID happened. Our plan was to present this back in March when they visited the personnel committee. So, staff is excited. I know that council members are excited, and I think that the community believes that this is overdue. So I'm happy that we can move forward if it is the will of council, and Bob and Kendra are absolutely phenomenal, and their resumes speak for themselves. And I think that we're incredibly lucky to have them help us guide us through this process.
Hey, Mayor, did you have a question?
Make a proposal, please. I'd like to propose that we go forward with the Riley Center for Livable Communities in a strategic plan, not to exceed $15,000.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? See none. Nicole? It only takes me like 5 votes to learn, but go ahead.
That's okay.
Mayor, this is a lot harder than it looks, isn't it?
It is.
Nicole, take off. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chair Pounds,
Aye.
all in favor?
All in favor. Thank you. Kendra and Bob, thank you guys so much for joining us again.
Thank you for having
There'll be nothing getting our way this go round, and we'll get this thing kicked off quickly. So,
Thank you very much.
yeah, thank you.
Thank
all.
you.
Yeah, have a good evening.
Thank you.
evening.
Good night.
Bye.
So Personnel Committee, thank you all for keeping this in front of us and down a path. Very much appreciated. So thank you for that. All right, we're going to back up into old business at this point. Discussion and consideration of the fiscal 21 budget draft number 3. You had this sent to you on April 29th, give or take, and we've got just a couple of quick slides I want to run through, but let me just talk through the timeline real quick of kind of best case scenario, if you would. And Desiree, it only took me a half hour to figure out how to split my screen differently so I can see all the participants now if somebody raises their hand. So back up, Ron, if you'll just stay on that main slide. So real quick, just timeline. Some of you saw Desiree's email update maybe a week or so ago that the MEIC is doing some lobbying efforts to hopefully push out the approval date for municipalities and their budget process. And Desiree, I think that was 60 days they were trying to get to a push out. Is that right?
Yes, I do have some updated information on that, just hot off the press. I did reach out to MASC today and to ask for a report or progress report on those efforts. And the General Assembly does not reconvene until September unless they decide to come back earlier. So it is highly unlikely that they will consider amending state law. The governor could issue an executive order extending it, but who knows if that will happen or not. So there's still a statute that includes a requirement that the city must pass a balanced budget by June 30th, and we would still be bound by that. So whether the city passes a budget with the understanding that back, in September or October, when we have a somewhat more information about impact and more financial information to better refine our forecast, that there is an understanding that at that time, the city will consider an amendment to the budget. But at the end of the day, whether we call it a continuing resolution or passing a budget, it's the same process. We have to have 2 readings and a public hearing for both processes. So at the end of the day, whether it's a continuing resolution or a budget, it's the same. It's pretty much the same. It's just a play on words a little bit. And the recommendation is that we do pass a budget by the June 30th. With the understanding that things are fluid. We are presenting a budget with the best information that we have today. That can change, and we can go back and go through the amendment process the first quarter of the new fiscal year.
Yeah, thank you. So best case scenario tonight would be, we'll make a motion to approve this budget, take it to council next week. I'd love to see where May results come in, and then if we need to tweak our assumptions, to Desiree's point, we can make changes before that second reading in the end of June, so to be effective for our new fiscal year. So that's best case scenario. So let me just run through, just as a reminder, of our assumptions real quick, and then we'll make a motion and open up for discussion. So you'll remember the whole budget is based on, and Debbie referenced this, looking at the April results. The whole budget is really based on these revenue assumptions you see right here. And again, these are revenue assumptions for the city, not businesses in our community, but for the city. So Debbie touched on this. We had a very conservative budget, 100% reduction on tourism money from March to July. You saw those numbers earlier. They weren't stellar, but they weren't zero. Local option sales tax, you see those assumptions there, 75%, 50%, and so forth, and you can see all the other numbers there. So again, I just wanted to come back and level set on where we were with our assumptions that built the budget. So Ron, if you'll go one more, please. So this budget that you received in the end of April is exactly what we talked about and looked at budget workshop number 3. So there really haven't been much change since that. So just a quick reminder of some of the bigger ticket items that are included here. About 3.6 million in a revenue reduction due to COVID. We've got 3.9 million to finish the repair of the public safety building, always been the plan. 3.1 million for the construction of phase 3 drainage outfall project. And you'll remember this has a millage increase to it of 1.3 mills. So our current tax rate is 0.247. We would go to 0.260. 3.2 million for the construction of Marina docks and recoat the bulkhead. And you'll remember on both this and the drainage, we're issuing bonds for this. And Desiree and Debbie and I have had a couple of conversations with financial advisors and our bankers. Both of these will probably be general obligation bonds, not to bore you with the detail, but just from a availability of money standpoint. So the phase 3 drainage would be paid for with the millage increase. The Marina docks and bulkhead would be paid for 75% A-tax money and 25% Marina revenue. So we'll talk about that more in just a moment. 225,000 partial year right-of-way paid parking on Palm and the avenues. And again, all these pieces are what's included in the budget that you've had for a couple of weeks to review. 235,000 in new revenue from increased parking rates. That's an agenda item here in just a moment. 300,000 to refurbish the fire pumper truck. 250,000 for a comprehensive drainage plan, which would fit nicely into our strategic plan as well. 500,000 for the small targeted drainage projects, and 92,000 for a 2% merit pool for first part of next year. So again, I just wanted to level set kind of back to where we left off from the workshop number 3. So Desiree, should we do a motion first and then open this up for discussion? Ron, you can take that off, please. Thank you.
You can have discussion, you can have a motion to approve as presented or recommend as presented to city council next week. However you would like, Chair.
Okay. Debbie, why don't, if you have any more level setting or commentary on draft 3, why don't we do that first and then we'll entertain a motion if that's all right.
You're asking me if I have any more to say about the budget?
Correct.
You know, I feel like that our approach was conservative. Y'all all know I like being conservative when it comes to money. We lowballed the revenue side. We took a hard look at expenditures and where we could eliminate. There's not a lot of fluff in our budgets to begin with. So there's not a lot that can be eliminated, but we did delay some capital purchases. I think we've done everything we can to get a good workable budget. Again, as we talked about earlier, I only see an upside to the forecast. So I feel positive about it.
I do want to say something. You know, there's always the concern of what happens with COVID-19. Is there a resurgence in the fall that, you know, puts us back to where we were back in February? We don't know. We certainly can pivot. We're in a position that if that happens, we can pivot and change our strategy. And that is part of my conversation with planning on amending and planning on looking at where we are in September after a quarter. We'll have a better outlook of how this summer progressed and where we are at that point. But at this point, there are a lot of unknowns. There are certainly a lot of uncertainty, but like Debbie said earlier, we feel comfortable because from the very beginning, our assumptions are pretty conservative. And we discussed it at the third budget workshop. And, you know, as we have seen, economic activity has started on the island in May, and we're assuming nothing through July. The other thing is, if you look at page 2 of your budget, in the summary of key budget initiatives, there are some initiatives that could be delayed, could be deferred, could be eliminated. So that's all part of the discussion. And I think at the workshop number 3, there was the consensus from the group was, let's move forward with all of the projects as presented that were included in the budget, knowing again that we would wait until, you know, end of June when we have a little bit more information before council considers second reading of the budget. So that's all I wanted to add, Chair Pounds.
Great. So let me, Randy, let me make a motion. If we can get a second, then we can open up for discussion. So I will make a motion that we approve the fiscal 21 budget as presented and have it prepped for first reading at council next week. Can I get a second so we can get to the discussion? Ryan, thank you. All right, questions, Randy, first.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about revenue that we're comfortable with, I can get there on things that are under our control. I have a lot of difficulty with Marina revenues, and our all-in revenues when the Morgan Creek Grill was operating were approximately $435,000 a year. We have a revenue stream right now of less than $200,000 per year. So we have a $3.2 million bond proposal that's 75% A-tax and 25% off revenues. And frankly, the revenues don't exist. And for a real property committee, we're still struggling to get through this restaurant proposal. And in the conversations with those that are proposing a restaurant, highly unlikely to have a fully operational restaurant until probably mid next year. So I'm just struggling with, and look, I'm in favor of getting the marina done. I'm struggling with the concept of borrowing that much money on unfounded revenues right now. And I understand the difference between going for a GO bond and doing it this way, while money is cheap. But I just honestly, Deb, and you might help me, I can't make the math work off $200,000 in revenue. And, in talking to restaurateurs, they are struggling with, are we going to open at 50%? Are we going to open outdoor only? Are we going to be able to get a bank loan at this point, working through some of the logistical issues we have around the marina leases? So help me understand how can we be comfortable with that part of the budget?
Let me take a shot at that real quick first.
Sure.
Yeah. So, hey, Randy, in the big honking budget document, go to page 43, and we'll look at the marina information specifically, some cash flow and rent. So page 43 of the really big budget document.
It's page 71 of the whole package.
Of the package. Thank you, John.
I'm multimedia today.
All right, I'm with you. Tell me when everybody's there. Just give me a.
I'm on 71.
All right. So focusing on column O, the budget fiscal 21. All right. So we're projecting about 256,000 roughly in marina revenue for fiscal 21. Okay. And then if you move that on out to your point about, when a restaurant's going to be there. So look at forecast for fiscal year 22. We've only got $50,000 in there at this point. So again, is that high? Is that low? It's certainly not back anywhere close to full, steam from a restaurant standpoint. So, and then if you'll flip over 2 more pages to page 45 real quick. And again, look at budget 21 column, you can see the cash flow there from the beginning cash flow of 824 and walking it through. I mean, there is no doubt we are eating into some reserves to get over the hump for 21, 22, without a doubt. So Debbie, sorry, go ahead.
And Philip, if I may, we've averaged moving, close to $800,000 a year exclusive of this debt financing into the marina, right? So people need to be fully cognizant. We're not just talking about the debt financing on 3.2. We're talking about the offset that we move every year for the fact that we don't have revenues and a cash flow positive situation down there.
So you can look at the transfers in on line 67, the actual transfers in, and then at the bottom, you can see the source of the transfer in. So for FY21 budget, it comes from state aid tax, you're correct, roughly 216,000.
Correct.
Debbie?
Well, I think that y'all pretty much covered it. What this analysis at the bottom of this page does is show the cash flow year by year. So as Philip mentioned, there's a hump we've got to get over in FY21, but we don't ever go negative in cash. We are transferring in $216,000 from the state ATAX fund, but that is less than we transferred in FY19 and FY18, which were both over 400,000. So if I flip really quick to the state ATAX budget, even with our very conservative budget, we're projecting tourism related.
31.
Thank you.
No, you don't have to do that. It's okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm directing Ron.
We're a very conservative forecast on the state aid tax side for FY21 is 647,000. So there is money coming in.
And that includes our very conservative assumptions. And Those
Correct.
figures are on page 31 of the budget.
Councilmember Moy.
Thank you, Chair. And this question goes to you and Debbie, I guess. Does this, I know we have a potential rent abatement on the agenda as well. Is that factored into this number, or would that be an additional impact?
So the rent abatement actually is included in the budget. You can see it in the notes, and I used again a number that I felt like was conservative. You'll have to look on the revenue page in the notes. So there's a potential rent abatement included in the Marina store rent line and the Marina operations rent line. So I don't know what council will approve, but there's sufficient money in there to cover both of the proposals that were included in the packet.
Excellent.
So it is included.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, Randy, I want to come back to you. Maybe, did we answer your questions? Maybe not fully, but I mean, are you?
I don't, Philip, honestly, I don't know that they're answerable. I mean, there's so many unknowns around revenue, and, you know, my big concern remains the restaurant and getting that thing on track in a timely manner. I do have, you know, follow up to Councilmember Moy's question on abatements. And Debbie, as it came out of real property, did we get substantiation for the numbers? Or are we still basing on what was brought to real property last week?
Well, actually, we haven't gotten there yet, but we do want to defer y'all's consideration of the rent abatement associated with the docks so that we can take another look at that at staff level.
Mm-hmm.
But the UST related underground storage tank related abatement, we would like y'all to opine on later.
Yeah, that one's pretty clear, but yeah. And that we have an item on the agenda and we were prepared to make that request.
Susan?
Thank you. I have a question about the public safety building. There have previously, we've mentioned the possibility of borrowing money at low rates, and instead of going ahead and paying for it out of our budget directly as a way to provide us some breathing room. Are we looking at that more seriously?
Yeah, thank you. And yes, you know, again, some of this is timing a little bit, Susan. Couple of conversations with financial advisors and our bankers, you know, suggesting you might want to wrap the public safety in with the drainage and kind of put it all together, if you will. There's a little bit of a timing issue with that because we'll be done with the public safety. I'm knocking on wood, you know, by the time we get ready to do phase 3. So, but we could easily wrap it later just to replenish our cash if we wanted to, if the rates were decent. So long-winded answer to your question, absolutely, that's still on the table to make sure we don't use that much cash if we don't want to. Mayor, did I see? Yeah, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, you know, merit pool 2%, $92,000 versus a 2% cost of living. What's the difference total? Do we know, or is that Debbie question?
That's Debbie. You know,
So the 2% equals the 92,000. So if we add another 2% for COLA, is that what you're?
No, 2.5 is what you were asking, Mayor, right?
Right. I really at cost of living. I look at our police, our fire, our sanitation, basically all of our city employees who are traveling from Somerville, Hanahan, North Charleston, all over the county. And, you know, they're 45 minutes to an hour to drive here, same distance to go back. Their cost of living is going up like everybody else's. They got cities across the Charleston County that are closer to home that are offering them more money and less driving times. And I look at our employees, and we've got to take care of our employees or we're going to be losing them. So I think a cost of living is almost mandatory.
Other questions, thoughts, observations? Jimmy, you're on mute.
by now.
There you go.
Reports that I've seen, food costs in the United States went up 2.6% in April. 2.6% in 1 month. It's the highest increase in 1 month since 1974. And of course, it won't continue that high, but we got a crisis going on that reaches far beyond just the health concerns. The food chain is a major problem, great concern to me. I think people, municipality, their workers are going to be spending a lot more money just to survive. So I concur with the mayor's comments.
Randy?
So it's on mute. I'll be that person again this year. I'm not opposed to a pool of money to raise salaries appropriately where appropriate. When you apply 2% to $90,000, it's an $1,800 raise. We definitely have employees in this city in pay ranges that we are going to have to be competitive and in some cases above market to retain those employees. But we had this same debate last year during the budget about not having an automatic 2% across the board COLA increase for everybody. And, you know, I would have hoped that we would stand by that went through council last year instead of coming back in another year and saying, we're going to do the COLA thing all over again after we debate it. And, you know, look, there is no doubt that we have employees in Somerville and other places at low wage scales that we are going to have to incent to stay here and come here. We have a set of employees that we don't have the same issues. I'm in favor of giving the department heads control over what they do with the monies that are allocated, but not, you know, legislatively apply peanut butter spreads on COLA increases.
And Rusty, go ahead.
Now, I'm in the same place as Councilman Bell on that. We discussed that in personnel committee some time back about COLA increases. And I mean, I think if you've got a dedicated pool of money that each department manager can administer along the city administrator and do it judiciously to the ones that really need the increases, that's the way to go, instead of just a across the board COLA increase.
And Mayor, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but again, all we're talking about right now is creating a pool of money to be decided by the personnel committee and department heads and administrator on how to spread it. You know, Mayor, I think you were proposing, instead of, I'm just using round numbers for a minute, instead of 92,000 at 2%, let's go to 104,000. That is a 2.5% raise. And that's our pool. Again, these are just placeholders. All of these are projects, merit pool, anything's just a placeholder in the budget, not money we've spent. So I don't know that we need to try and solve how we're going to spread the money tonight as much as we need to think about what's the pool we want to create in our budget to put for our department heads at some point. Susan.
Thank you. And along those lines, I'd like to know if it would be appropriate for the personnel committee at its next meeting to look at some recalibrations based on changes in our revenue situation, and consider how we can best take care of our employees looking forward, and whether we, like I said, need to recalibrate the amount that we're looking at. Maybe not necessarily how it's divvied up, but the percentage that we're looking at.
Yeah, thank you. Jimmy C was first, and Jimmy W, I'll come to you.
Okay, thank you. I looked at the Charleston County Auditor's report, and you know, the merit pool is a select few at the tops or at different locations. Forget the merit pool and just do a cost of living across the board. I look at our millage rate. Sullivan's Island's double ours. Folly Beach is 36.9, Charleston 86.6, Mount Pleasant 41. You know, we're 24.7. We are by far the cheapest out here. Just thanks.
Sorry. Yeah, Jimmy Ward.
Yeah, I concur with you, Mr. Chairman. This is a really unusual, bizarre budget year, and there's so little that we don't know right now. And I don't think we need to like beat it to death. And each individual line item tonight is get through the first reading, there's a whole wealth of information is going to be coming in the next 30 days that we can dissect this and get down to it. I think we should be looking at just go ahead and getting this through. We know we have a lot of work to do in the next reading. Thank you.
Yeah, Jimmy, I would totally and completely concur with that commentary. Other questions or thoughts or comments? Debbie, Desiree, anything else to add to the discussion?
No.
Okay. Going one last time. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? All right, we had a motion. We had a second. Nicole, you want to roll call the?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman. His lips said aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Val,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy, Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chair Pounds,
Aye.
all in favor?
Awesome. Thank you. That went faster than I was expecting. Thank you all. And Jimmy Ward.
Thanks to Mr. Chairman. Thank you for putting all this together. Thank you for Debbie and all the staff.
Yeah,
huge.
it's absolutely Debbie and Desiree, without a doubt. It just get a little shout out for Debbie. We were on with a financial advisor last week, I guess it was, guys.
Yes.
And the feedback on Ms. Suggs was one of the top 3 treasurers in the state. So that's quite a compliment from somebody that's outside the community and has that view of Debbie. So thank you, Debbie. For all the work. It's been a lot of hours, so appreciate that. All right, our next item down in new business is item B, consideration of expenditure in the amount of $28,690.68 for mobile radio upgrades. You have a memo in your packet for this. Let's just go ahead and get a motion and a second, and we'll have some discussion hopefully. So I'll make the motion to approve this expenditure in the amount of $28,690.68 for mobile radio upgrades. Is there a second?
Second.
Rusty, thank you. Desiree and or Chief, what do you guys want to highlight? Or Desiree, you're on mute.
There you go. So yeah, I'll restate the information that's included in your packets and the memo dated in February 24th. We presented this request to the Public Safety Committee, and it was recommended to be brought forward to City Council for approval. This has to do with some necessary upgrades to the walkie-talkies that the fire department replaced about 4 years ago. Our radios are typically subject to very harsh conditions, so their replacement schedule, it's a little shorter than other departments. We have a special pricing in front of us available to the city of Charleston County, and which is roughly 25% lower than state contract pricing. The expenditure is going to be absorbed by the current FY20 budget, which includes $7,500 for radio maintenance contract and $10,000 for accountability. The new upgrades will cover the accountability portion. There is a difference of $11,000 that could be covered with existing budgeted funds for mobile radio replacement as needed. So leaving a balance of roughly $10,000, $6,027, which could be allocated to cover that difference. Chief, do you want to go ahead and describe some of the upgrades that are included as part of this expenditure and why they're necessary for the fire department?
Yes, thank you. For starters, our radios, as said, were purchased about 4 years ago. Most of the county purchased theirs in 2019 under a special contract. We couldn't wait that long. The upgrades that are available today were not available at the time we purchased our radios. So one of the things that the entire county is trying to get on board with is called OTAP. It's over-the-air programming. So our radios have to be kept up to date, similar to a computer with updates. So every time there's a flash upgrade for the radios, Each radio has to be taken to North Charleston. We generally take them in batches of 3 or 4, maybe 7. It can take up to a month to get these turned around. And during that time period, there could be a problem with the radio, and until it's flash upgraded, it doesn't solve the problem. So once this over-the-air programming takes place, they'll be able to send the flashes over the air, and that'll eliminate multiple trips and lengthy trips to the North Charleston radio shop. That's one of the things. In addition, we'll have GPS tracking in the radios. So not only will it be able to help track the person, it will also track the equipment to the last known location. We've had times in the past where radio was either mislocated and took a while to find, but this will pinpoint the last known location, whether the person's in a fire or if their radio is lost. Another thing that's going to happen is this will bring us up to board with the rest of the county. We'll be able to track the radios. There's a group services that's included. It's going to bring us in more compatibility with the rest of the county. The radios will still have to go to the shop at least once a year to be preventative maintenance for alignment purposes. If they get out of line, that's a problem that cannot be done over the air. But this will save us a significant amount of time and money by running the radios back and forth throughout the year just for flash upgrades.
Hey, Ryan, and I'm sorry, I forgot, I knew this came through public safety. Anything you want to add to that conversation?
No, that's basically it, really. Is just in order for us to keep up with the rest of the county and the tech, it's really technology in what we're trying to keep up with. We need to go ahead and move forward with this.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions or comments? Chief Graham, thank you for bringing this up and getting us to this discounted price concept.
Thank you.
Ryan, I'm getting you a virtual background, man. So we've had a motion and a second. Nicole, you want to do roll call on this one?
Absolutely. Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chair Pounds,
Aye.
all in favor?
Very good. Thank you, Nicole. Item C is a report of the BB&T municipal lease for the purchase of the 75-foot ladder truck. Chief or Desiree, who wants to just give a quick?
I'll go ahead and we want to report to City Council that the city finalized the municipal lease on March 25th. This is for the purchase of the new 75-foot ladder truck that was delivered to the city in March. The interest rate that we acquired for this municipal lease was 1.83%. The budget included a 4% interest rate, so very, very good news. And the total amount that was budgeted was $849,500, and the total cost of the truck, it's $848,267.
Great, thank you. And Desiree, this is just a report out. We don't need action on this, right?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. Very good. Thank you all. Item D, you also have this info in your packet, consideration of rent abatement. Debbie mentioned earlier, we're going to take the MJV due to dock damage off for tonight and just look at the UST project delay. So Debbie, I don't know, or Ron, if we want to put that up so we can walk through it, or how you want to do this one.
So I'll go ahead and start while they're figuring out the graphic. But as you all know, the underground storage tank project replacement at the Marina went over its time budget. The intent was to get that whole project completed in the off season, but it went into May of 2018. So looking at the two businesses down there, the Marina Market was unable to sell fuel for longer than they expected, and Marina Joint Ventures was unable to sell diesel fuel and their dry storage area was compromised by the staging area for the project. So this proposal does not reimburse for the entire period, but we look at the entire period and the decline year over year, and then calculate an average loss per day, and then multiply that by the number of days the project was delayed. And that's how we got to the estimated rent abatement. So in effect, this just shares with the tenants that were impacted the recovery that the city did receive, a portion of the recovery the city received on the contract. If anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Deb, just a comment for everybody's benefit. It was delays from the contractor, with the contract paying us X amount of dollars per day. So that was a given, which more than covers this expense. I think it was what, $1,300 a day or something in that range.
It was less than that, but yeah, you're correct. This would be covered by some of that and the contingency that the city did not spend as part of that contract.
Right.
So we are looking for a motion to recommend for city council for approval, so we can go ahead and
well, I'll make a motion to
complete
approve
this transaction.
I'll second.
I need the actual motion, please.
I will make a motion to approve the amount as stated for this particular item on the rent abatement.
Underground storage tanks.
Underground storage tanks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ryan, seconded. Thank you. Other comments or questions on this piece of it? Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I know Debbie's going to get back and we're deferring the other abatement. And I know she's getting back with Brian and just was hoping that maybe we could have that done, maybe where we could vote on that part of it at council next week. Just making a comment.
Yeah.
Because this has been lingering on for a long time. We need to take care of this one way or the other.
I would agree, Kevin. I think that's certainly the goal. The goal was to have it tonight, but we just didn't quite get there. But that's certainly the goal, Kevin. Thank you. Other questions, comments? Hearing none, we've had a motion and a second. Nicole, you want to do a roll call?
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chair Pounds,
Aye.
all in favor?
Very good. Thank you. Debbie and Desiree and not public safety, real property. Thank you for chasing this one down. And Kevin, to your point, we'll try and have this wrapped up for our council meeting next week. Next item, you also have a policy in your packet. This is consideration of application to Department of Justice grant for the purchase of a drone. Chief Cornett, you keep bouncing around the screen on me, man. There you are. You want to, or Desiree, either one, do you guys want to give us a quick update on this topic?
I'll give a quick update and then open the floor up for Chief Cornett to speak to some of the specifics related to the policy. The chief and I had discussed prior to public safety, the opportunity for the city to acquire a drone by using some grant opportunities. And we presented that to the Public Safety Committee. And I think that there was consensus into having the discussion with full council in terms of the policy of using a drone by the police department. And for the city per se, but in this case specifically to the police department and some of the benefits that having a drone would yield to the department specifically for the summer, And we were requested to put together a policy on how the drone would be used by the department, and that's what we are presenting to you all today. So I'll let Chief Cornett speak to the specifics on that and provide additional information on the 2 grant opportunities that are up for grabs, and we would like council's blessing so that we could move forward with a grant application to acquire one.
Good evening, everyone. So what you have in front of you is a draft policy. We took it from the Municipal Association of South Carolina, which is our insurance provider. And then we also took some verbiage from our neighboring agencies from Charleston County Sheriff's Department, who has a drone program in place already. So the good news is everything in here is already blessed essentially by the Municipal Association because it came from them and their model policies. The biggest things that I know were concerns were, the rights and privacy for everybody else, that, we don't want to be Big Brother spying on random people. And our policy outlines that this is going to be strictly used for calls for service where we need to have the aerial advantage. Those things would include a missing child on the beach. We could put the drone in the air. It has a camera, a FLIR, and a PA system on it so that we could actually announce the child's name or description to the crowd in a hope to recover the child faster and get them reunited. It could also be used when we had the drone that we were just trying out. We were able to put it in the air and see the traffic backed up on the connector and get real-time information as far as how back it went. We were also able to we could use these things to help with a water rescue if the fire department was out there. We could use them if we were executing certain types of search warrants. And the reason I bring that up is because it is very specific in the policy, if you read, that if it is going to invade on somebody's privacy, then you have to have a search warrant for it. And that would be a very strict policy. It's not going to be something used to fly over and we've got a complaint in a house, so we just put it up in the air and look over the house to see if something's going on. That would be an improper use and would not be allowed through this policy. It would be strictly monitored by myself and other command staff members within the police department to make sure that we were utilizing it in the proper manner. By no means would we want to infringe on anybody's rights or to violate their rights under the Fourth Amendment or any other amendment. So we would be very careful in how we did this to utilize it, just protect individuals, to help save lives, to help the fire department should they have a water rescue where they need the aerial vision from the camera, or even after a hurricane or a storm that hits our island, we could utilize this for assessment purposes as well. Are there any questions? Did I kind of cover what everybody had in mind? Are there questions? Right now, the 2 grants, I guess I should clarify that. Department of Justice is a first come, first serve. It is 100%. Normally, those grants are going to be a 90% funding and a 10% matching. This one is 100%, but it is first come, first serve. The second option we have is a company out of California that is trying to get involved with law enforcement drones. They are donating to some. I've used some connections from graduates from the FBI National Academy to get our name on that list and see if we can maybe get one of those. And if they don't, we've got everything planned out. It may be something we revisit if we don't get either of those. It's roughly $4,500 to get the whole program. So that's where we're at. Are there questions I could answer at this time or try to answer?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Hey, Ryan, anything you want to add just from the public safety conversation we've had?
Yeah, it's I've had some questions about drone, and the chief has, answered a number of those questions. And I mean, drones can be the technology will not only have a lasting positive impact on the range of industries, but for especially post hurricanes, for kind of monitoring stuff like that. I just questioned. I brought up the whole Big Brother thing, but I think it can serve a legitimate law enforcement goal without the tools of being really unnecessary and intrusive surveillance. I would have to continue to follow the policies and make sure those things are thoroughly vetted. And those are my biggest concerns.
Yeah. And Chief Cornett, are you seeing other municipalities use drones for any other type services or such or not?
Absolutely. A lot of law enforcement agencies have realized how helpful a drone can be, especially right now, the COVID-19, utilizing them for social distancing enforcement to get an eyes view of where they're at without putting their officers at risk. That has been a huge help. But a lot of agencies, that's when the municipal association puts a model policy out, that's when you know that it's gained a lot of attention and it's become a national trend in law enforcement. And so it is definitely, and several agencies around us, to include Mount Pleasant, have drone programs already in place.
Mayor.
Yes, sir. Chief, thank you. Number one, I think it's an incredibly smart idea for us to do. If I'm not mistaken, I think Sullivan's Island is using a drone, but like during this past weekend when the high tide is there, we can't even get the ATVs out on the beach. It's so crowded. And a drone would be the perfect ideal situation to use with the audio PA system to call out, the child's name that your parents are looking for them, the description. It's a win-win situation. I say, let's go for it.
Yeah. Chief Graham, anything you want to add to this conversation?
Anything that can help us find someone in the water or missing child is good with me.
Yeah. Other questions or comments, Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, more of, I guess, operation wise. First of all, I think it's a great idea, as long as we stay away from the big brother. But Chief, who's going to be the operator? Or I'm guessing there's multiple operators for the different shifts. How will you handle that?
So I would first, let me clarify. I am a big supporter of our rights. And so I promise you, we will do everything under our power to make sure we don't step on somebody's rights. And if we ever feel like we are, we're going to take the thing down and we're not going to use it until we can fix that problem to make sure we are not doing that again. What we would do is there are two different approaches. There's a 107 license, which gives an individual the right or the opportunity to become the pilot, or there's a COA, which is what is recommended and what is in the policy that I've presented to you and was actually recommended through the municipal association. The COA gives us the ability to have multiple pilots under our department or within our city that we can train and make sure that they're getting all the legal training and the actual training on the device. We would be very careful to make sure they do that. There's a process in here that you could see to include physicals and everything that they have to go through to make sure that they meet those standards before they can even become one of the pilots. And we have if you notice in here, there's a pilot and there's an observer. You have to have both all the time. And the reason is the pilot needs to be focused on flying the drone, and the observer is making sure they're not hitting something, or if there's an aircraft coming, we as a drone always have to clear the way for the plane to come through or the other flying objects. So there has to be a team there. So we'd be very careful on who we picked for that and make sure that they were highly trained before we put them out there just flying these things around. We've signed up for several webinars already to learn the legal process and make sure we're doing it in all the legal ways that we need to be doing it.
So is it, if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, go ahead.
Is this going to be totally, is it going to be just under the operation of the police department, correct? I mean, in conjunction, if the fire department needs it, you'll issue somebody to go out there. And if that somebody do they have to be certified to fly it?
Yes, they need to be certified. Otherwise, insurance won't cover it if something happens.
And as for the fire department operation portion of it?
Correct. We would have no objection to a joint, a joint drone, unless, let me say the only caveat to that would be if it was stipulated in a grant that we got, then obviously we cannot deviate from that. But if any other way, we would certainly, I'm all about, let's work together. What's mine is the fire department's what the fire department's is ours. We're one team, one fight.
Other questions, comments?
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
sir, Mayor.
just see, look at Chief Cornett quarantined in his truck. I also see a red shirt, a blue shirt, and a white shirt going back and forth behind him. Good job in your quarantine there, Chief.
Thank you.
Sorry, just a sly comment.
All right. Sorry. So Desiree, does this motion need to entail applying for the grant and purchasing the drone? Well, how do you want this phraseology?
I think you can make a recommendation to council to approve the draft policy as presented and approve the city to pursue grant opportunities to purchase or acquire the drone.
Okay.
I think Councilmember Streetman had his hand raised earlier.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thank you, Desiree and Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question here to the chief. How extensive is the technical training on the drone? Do you have any idea at this point?
So most of what we're required to do is to know the law. That's where you get in the most trouble if you do it wrong. Like you can only go 400 feet. If you go higher than that, then you've got to have approval from FAA for every flight you put up. That's the hardest part. Other than that, it's really working with the manufacturer of the drone and making sure that you're taking the time to put it up and get some training hours with it and realize how it maneuvers with the air. So a lot of that it's a little bit of book time, but a lot of it is just time spent flying it. And it's in the policy how many hours we would require them to have of training, putting it in the air before we would say you're a pilot and you're solo.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Kevin.
Sorry, one more. So this training, is that an additional cost or is it part of the $4,500?
It would be part of the cost to buy the drone. So the way it works is the COA, which we have to get, really is just paperwork. We have to get a letter from legal from our legal attorney that says, hey, we are a city or a government agency. Once we get that, then we really start moving forward. All that's just part of the process. That it doesn't cost us anything extra. We did find training that was $100 if we wanted to send somebody to it. But then in that same day, I found the same training for free. And obviously we like free over spending money. So we're signing up for as much free as we can. And I think we'll be able to do it. If there is a cost associated with it, we'll take it out of our training budget, just because I don't see it right now. But if one sneaks up on us, we'll throw it in with our training budget.
Thank you.
Other questions? Rusty, sorry about that. I just missed you, man. All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the draft policy as presented and prepare an application to the Department of Justice for the grant and for the purchase of a drone. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor. Any additional questions or comments? Nicole, you want to do roll call, please?
No, just a procedural comment. Do we need to put an amount in that motion so that the chief doesn't have to come back in the event he doesn't get the grant? It says the motion was made to purchase a drone. It's a question of Desiree, probably.
Yeah, good point.
Well, the committee could certainly include in the motion a not to exceed number in the event that we're not successful in getting the grant. It would be an unbudgeted expenditure if it's made in prior to FY20. It could also be considered as an amendment to FY21 budget.
Okay. I'd like to make an amendment to approve the amount not to exceed $4,500 as an unbudgeted item.
Second.
I'm sorry, who was that?
The mayor.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions on that amended motion? John?
I have a question of the chief. I sort of interpreted this as, hey, there's a grant opportunity, so we should get this. And not that there's no value in it. If there was no grant opportunity, would you be bringing us a drone proposal?
We have wanted a drone. We just have not presented it to council at this point. When we saw the grants available, we thought now would be the right time to bring it because I think we can get it for free. But it is a tool that is going to be a great asset to our department, regardless of how we get it. And remember, there's just the one grant. There's one company I'm trying to get to just give us one. And it obviously we'll take any way we get it, but yeah, we would have presented it regardless. Maybe not right this moment, but we would have presented it regardless.
Mhm, yeah, I would concur with that.
Thank you. Yeah, I like your wheeling and dealing. Yeah.
Nicole, we need to have a roll call vote on the amendment first.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chair Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor of the motion to amend where it's not to exceed $4,500 as an unbudgeted expense.
Thank you. So now back to our original motion.
As amended.
As amended.
Amended, which was for the approval of the policy as written application for the Department of Justice grant and to purchase the drone.
And pursue the grant, right?
Pursue the grant, thank you.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Chair Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Very good, thank you. And Chief, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Good luck with the grant. I hope that happens.
Thank you all for your support and assistance.
Yeah. Next item is F, discussion regarding establishing a matching grant program to assist IOP businesses participating in the MUSC's Back to Business program. You'll recall, you don't have anything in your packet on this, but you'll recall when Dr. O'Brien was here the last time, he mentioned this program, and we've had some interest in doing that. Susan, you want to just give some thoughts or ideas or?
Sure. I mean, I did bring this up to you and to our city administrator. It seems like it would be a strong proactive measure both to help protect public health of our community and our visitors, but also pragmatically would be something that we could tout to people in the long run. And if we establish ourselves as leaders in this arena of making sure that we're following good practices, that could ultimately, help people decide whether they're going to choose to spend time here vacationing and that kind of thing. But overall, it just seems like a smart investment to me. I'm not totally familiar with the costs of how expensive it is, so maybe our city administrator can fill us in.
Yeah, and I think for tonight's purpose, sorry, Desiree, we don't have all the pieces ironed out on this by any stretch. It's more directional conversation and topic. So Desiree, sorry.
Sure. We actually engaged with the MUSC Back to Business program for the Recreation Center. We had talked about wanting to have that seal of approval and that oversight from public health experts before we opened the indoor facilities at the Recreation Center. And they were there today. I think they will return tomorrow to finish, and we'll develop a toolkit. And the cost to the city for the Recreation Center was roughly $300. We are communicating with the MUSC Back to Business program coordinator and trying to get additional information. We also scheduled a sort of an informational meeting, Zoom meeting that we have shared with our brick and mortar restaurants and other businesses to attend so that they know that this resource is available to them. When we talk to the group that is conducting this through MUSC, they indicate that they're really looking to cover their costs, their hourly costs of the folks that come in to do the on-site assessment of the cleaning practices, cleaning products, and who will be preparing the toolkit that is presented to businesses. So it depends on the size of the business, but if you want to have an idea of, you could kind of compare the organization of the rec center and it being roughly $300, and then maybe we can extrapolate some from that. But we don't have clear-cut numbers for costs yet, but we're hoping that we get that by Thursday or on Thursday.
John,
Thank you. And Councilmember Smith, I think this was a really great idea. And I think this is good discussion for us to be having in terms of showing support for our businesses in the midst of this time. But also, I think it's actually very self-serving for us as well. My understanding is this program will provide very visible certification and marketing power for the businesses that choose to use it. And so in the similar way that you see a food grade that from DHEC that says you're an A, you'll be able to have a sticker that says, you know, this business has been certified by epidemiologist experts from MUSC as being consistent with, you know, doing everything they can to reduce the spread of COVID. And I think that would be high value. I think there's a lot of consumers who would seek out establishments that have that seal. So I think the things that we can do to help our businesses get that that level of training and guidance and then ultimately certification that has obviously a lot of public health implications. My mind goes to the marketing immediately. And I think that there's a lot of great value there. So I'm not sure what the dollar amount is. And I don't know, Desiree, if you have an idea of how many businesses you think might want to participate in this. And maybe that would be something to bring to council or to share with council before the next meeting. But I personally would be in favor of at least going a direction and thinking about if we did, you know, so we could cap certain amounts and cap certain numbers of participants, but knowing that $300 was the cost for the rec center, it seems like it's a very reasonable amount of money for us to help a lot of businesses in the community.
I'm hoping that I get some feedback on Thursday after the meeting that we've invited some, you know, our business community to participate in. And that the number, you know, the city council could decide on a matching program of $5,000 to match 50% the cost of participating in the program. That's really sort of directional for council to set. And then, you know, we can definitely develop a proposal or a plan on how, you know, folks would apply and what kind of accountability we can put in place to ensure that it's being used properly. But in terms of the amount, you know, it's hard to say. We can start at a number that everybody feels comfortable with and kind of go from there, because this, you know, this would be new for us as well.
Susan.
Thank you. That's excellent information. And I think that really, we should try to engage as many businesses as we can, and the amount seems really reasonable. Also, I think, you know, our short-term rental and hotel accommodations sector could also benefit in addition to restaurants. I'm not clear. I wasn't clear if you were thinking of along those lines as well, but, you know, obviously based on our conversations with that council that looked at their recommendations, that's good. They have those recommendations in place, but implementing them is a different thing altogether. So those are my thoughts, and thank you for the effort that you put into that already.
Other thoughts or questions? John.
One something for the city staff to take back is maybe to reach out to the CVB and see if they would also join in our matching.
Good point.
We'll do, John. Oh, Councilmember Moy.
Others, questions? Someone want to entertain a motion with a cap or a percentage match, or Desiree, do we want to wait on more information after Thursday and do it at council meeting, or what's your timing thinking?
I would say just wait until
we can put this item again on the agenda for Tuesday for city council under the report for Ways and Means. And I'll plan on giving you all a report based on Thursday's meeting that may help the committee or the you know, council making a decision at that point.
Yeah. Ryan, I heard you kind of thumbs up. Is that?
Yeah, that's
Mayor,
I hate voting on something that I don't know what the price is yet, and even arbitrary bill it. Or vote on something we don't know what the price is yet.
Yeah, but I mean, I like the idea of a cap without a doubt. So I think that makes sense. All right, we will take this up at council then, Desiree.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, good. Susan, thank you for bringing it back up to us after we had heard it from Dr. O'Brien. I think it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Item G, consideration of changing the daily parking rate at the municipal parking lots to $15 on Saturday, Sunday, and holidays, and $2.50 for on-street parking along Ocean Boulevard between 10th and 14th Avenue. So we just looked at the budget and approved the budget to go to council. So this item is included in that budget, obviously, from a revenue standpoint. Desiree, I think this conversation is about, do we want to make it effective prior to 7/1 of the new budget year? Is that fair?
Yes, that is correct. Like you said, the budget already assumes that those increases will happen by July 1st. It would still require a motion and recommendation and vote from City Council. There is a section of state law that requires that any changes in user fees be approved by ordinance. So we would have to have 2 readings of an ordinance making that change and a public hearing. I sent the mayor and Chair Pounds 2 different schedules on how that, how the City Council could entertain going down that route. One would be the regular schedule. A recommendation could be made by Ways and Means, presented at first reading next Tuesday at the regular City Council meeting. And then presented for second reading by June 23rd, which would be the next regularly scheduled City Council meeting. Council could expedite that and entertain 2 special meetings to consider first and second reading. Those meetings have to be within 7 days of each other. You have to have a 7-day period between first and second reading. So it depends on when, if council wants to go down the, after the expedited route, they have it implemented by the end of May, a month earlier, before the FY21 budget goes into effect, then we'd have to draft an ordinance, schedule a special meeting, and like I said, have 2 readings within 7 days.
And Desiree, I guess item G and H would really fall into that timing category, right? Or we'd need to keep it kind of together, if you will.
They would be separate items, but they would go through the same process. You could do the regular process, or you could do an expedited one.
Yep, that's what I meant. Better said. Thank you. Mayor.
Mute.
Mute. Jimmy, you're on mute. And now he's frozen.
Can you hear us, Mayor?
I can hear y'all. You hear me?
Okay, you were mute. I'm sorry.
Froze up on us. Far away.
Okay, I would prefer that we go for the expedited process and do it, getting done by 5/28. I think our residents want this to happen, and I want this to happen.
Kevin?
I hope our council wants this to happen.
Sorry, Mayor. Sorry about that. Kevin?
Yeah, I didn't know if we wait for discussion or not, but the raising the municipal parking lot, how does this affect the businesses employees parking?
Employees of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Employees are able to purchase a seasonal pass, which currently is $60, and they can park at any of the 2 municipal lots with that pass, which is something that, I don't know if the Ways and Means Committee wants to discuss or consider, because if you increase the daily rate on the weekends, that's 4 visits of somebody who has a seasonal pass, and that seasonal pass is also available to visitors. So it's not included in the proposal, but you may or may not want to discuss the cost of the seasonal pass. Does that answer your question, Councilmember Popson?
Yeah, I just was wondering if increasing this would increase what they had to pay each year.
Not automatically, unless council decides to increase the cost of the seasonal pass.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Jimmy Ward.
You're muted.
Please.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I said I'm against raising the prices for seasonal passes for employees. They're having a rough enough time as it is. That's all.
Yep, thank you.
And,
Other comments, questions? Ryan?
and Desiree, I know we've had some problems with employees trying to find parking spots in the park because it's filled up so quick. In the area that we've behind, I mean, between the shops and the fire department, we were going to kind of cordon off for restaurant employee parking only. But there really hasn't been anybody there kind of monitoring that. And it's been filling up with folks coming to visit the beach. I wasn't sure if that was going to be the plan. I know we've made other arrangements for them to park elsewhere throughout the island, and that has helped out. And they've mentioned that as well. So I wasn't sure what the plan was for that.
Yeah, the plan has been, what we have been doing is scheduling somebody for the weekends. We have part-time staff scheduled for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday of this weekend. During the week, we do not have somebody over there scheduled. We figure the weekends are usually the busiest, but we will have and cordon off the small municipal lot for seasonal employees only. We do have less spaces available in that parking lot by virtue of the trailers and the staff that park there. But we will make it available to them. And we typically do on busy weekends.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Other comments or questions?
I'll just go ahead and reiterate that that increase generates $235,830, and we've already included that in our forecasted revenues for FY21. So we would, if council expedites this decision, then we would have an upside to our June basically forecast for parking revenue for FY20.
Yep, Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we proceed with a rate increase from $12 to $15 on the weekends and holidays, and from $2 to $2.50 on the metered lots, and do it in the expedited process.
Thank you. Second, somebody?
Second.
Thank you, Rusty. And real quick, because I think, again, Desiree only sent this process to Mayor and myself. So the fastest we can make this happen with a couple of special meetings, which should be quick though, okay? Should be a quick special meeting, would be May 28th. So that's just FYI. Other questions or comments?
One more thing, Desiree.
Oh, Brian, go ahead.
One thing this is going to do is affect the contract that we have, not the contract, but the agreement that we have with the hotel.
That agreement already includes a provision that any changes to the municipal parking lot would become effective as part of the contract.
I think they were thinking that it was going to go up the new budget year. So just to make sure they're aware that it will go up ahead of time.
Absolutely. The other thing I wanted to mention that I failed to mention earlier is that going to $15 Saturday, Sunday, and the holidays makes it consistent to the fee to park at the municipal parking lot on those same days.
John, did you have a question?
I have a comment and a request for Desiree and Debbie, and it's related to this in that the folks that come to these lots are contributing economically in a very direct way to our economy, and they're helping cover the costs for all of the public safety, all of the municipal services, the public works, everything that we provide in those areas and throughout the community. We've heard a lot of commentary from the surrounding communities about the tax contributions that they make to the indirect tax contributions that they make. I'd love to know, I'd like to have a better handle on how much tax revenue that's generated off island is actually coming to the island. Does that make sense?
For parking specific, John, or bigger than that?
No, this is just, I think this is part of a larger issue that we have increasing costs to our island, and we're looking for ways that represent an equitable sharing of all the costs that are coming in. And we know that our our community, we have property taxes, we have accommodations taxes, we have a lot of things that there's a lot of revenue that we generate here. And I'm looking to understand how much revenue is generated off island that makes it back to the island.
Got it. Other questions, comments on this particular item? We've had a motion and a second. Nicole, you want to roll call this one?
Absolutely. Councilmember Ward. Can you say it again? I'm sorry, Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll. Chairman Ward. Pounds, I'm sorry.
Yep, aye.
All in favor?
Very good, thank you. Item H, discussion regarding increasing parking fines. Desiree or Chief, who wants to discuss that one or bring us up to speed?
Well, this was included on the agenda, but I think as a request of several members who wanted to have discussion about potentially increasing the parking violation fines. They are currently $50 if you park illegally anywhere on the island. The parking meter fine at the Ocean Beach, both municipal lots and Ocean Boulevard between 10th and 14th, it's currently $25. That fee doubles after 30 days if it's not paid. But I believe that there has been some discussion. There has been some discussion about council wanting to have discussion about potentially increasing those fines. So this is included as a discussion only item on the Ways and Means agenda to facilitate that discussion.
Anybody want to?
Yeah.
Chief, you want to just give us, and we've all seen some of the numbers of tickets over the weekends and such, and maybe this week, just kind of give us an update if you don't mind.
Certainly. So as everybody was aware, last weekend was a fairly busy weekend for us on the island, as well as other islands. It sounds like everybody pretty much, after being cooped up for a couple months and a nice warm summer, decided they wanted to go spend some time at the summer or at the beach before the summer. We did write between Saturday and Sunday, we wrote 473 parking tickets. And majority of those tickets were for residential parking violations, so not having the decal. The second highest numbers would have been for the parking and no parking zones. And those, were you just asking about the parking, or were you looking for some other stats as well?
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Randy.
Yeah, just, I mean, this is obviously an ongoing conversation. I would just ask the chief, when we look at BSO and BSO head count, we've never been fully staffed since I've been on council. We've always had some troubles with it. I'd like to understand as we go forward, what's the optimal amount? That is probably the only self-funding job we have on the island. And just ask the chief to come back and tell us. You know, I know you wrote some 250 tickets on Saturday, probably could have written 500. If you had adequate staff, and it's just physically impossible to keep up with it. So as we think this through, I can tell you as one council member, I don't have a problem hiring more BSO to handle peak times. It's just something I think we ought to give some serious thought to, part of the budget process and also as an immediate need.
Yeah.
So I could tell you right now, we are at 50% capacity. We had 10 spots available for BSOs. We currently have 5 of those positions filled. We have 3 interviews scheduled for this coming Friday. We did, when we first started to have the shutdowns and the restrictions in place from COVID-19, we did stop bringing on additional BSOs in the beginning. 1 or 2 other benefits that we have right this moment would be that we brought on 2 police officers, new officers that were not sworn yet, and they have not been able to go to the academy. They've done all the classroom portion, and we've been able to utilize them in the capacity to help with BSO jobs. That they've also been a lot of our patrolling on the beach and enforcing the social distancing and the alcohol on the beach and things like that. They've been a great asset to have them right now, and I'm really glad we brought them on. Oftenly, it's hard for me to say if 10 is enough because, like you said, we've not been there. We weren't there last year. We're not there right now. But Ms. Fregoso did give me the go ahead and start pulling on new BSOs so that we could make sure that we were properly staffed to address the influx that's going to come this weekend and next weekend. And we've got several in the local area that we'll be able to start quickly after they get through the process. We still want to make sure that we do a good, thorough background check before we bring them on, though. So because they are dealing with money, they are dealing with individuals that sometimes aren't happy to see us.
Susan.
Thank you, Chairman Pounds. I have a couple of follow-up questions for the chief. The main one being, are we paying at a competitive rate for BSOs to attract and retain them? Or is that something that we need to seriously consider in terms of upping that pay rate?
So the only other area I'm aware of around us is they are paying more than we are. Some of ours have been courted here recently to go to another agency for about $16 an hour is what they're being offered, which is more than what we're offering at this point.
Okay, well, I'm not sure how we need to get there, but I think we need to look at making sure we're competitive. The investment that you reap by having a full staff of BSOs in terms of parking tickets are obvious. But in addition to that, I think it needs to be clear that we're entertaining this, I think, largely because of a lack, a control issue that we faced with very large crowds that could continue through the summer as the beach is an attractive, somewhat, viewed as safe place to go with social distancing if it's done right. But that we need to do our best to make sure that parking situation is under control so it's not unsafe for our visitors as they're coming and going to the beach. And the fact that we had triple and double parking for 20 blocks on Saturday is significant, in addition to the extra parking that was happening in residential areas where it's not required. So my question is, though, should we be looking at increasing this to say $100 or doubling, the $50 fine to $100 as a temporary measure or a permanent measure? And I think that should be a factor in our conversation.
Chief, do you want to respond to that, or that rhetorical?
I don't know that
at this
that's something I need to respond to.
Yeah,
I'll stay in my.
Jimmy Ward.
Is there a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Not at this point. We're having conversation. John, did you have a question? Yep. Go
Well,
ahead.
let's make a motion.
Well,
the proper procedures to make a motion and then that discussion.
I think you can do it either way, but that's fine. Go ahead, Desiree.
well, just as a point of clarification, the agenda says discussion regarding increasing parking fines. There's no consideration there. So it's for discussion only. No action should be taken.
And, hey, Chief, do you, or Desiree, either one, any sense for where, I mean, $50 is pretty cheap for somebody to come over and spend the day from a parking standpoint, if you will. Is there a sense for what does Charleston have as a ticket, or Mount Pleasant or other municipalities around?
I do not know that information. I
That's
do
okay.
know that we are the highest for parking violation in the area. That we know for sure, because we get the calls, and the ladies that handle the parking violators will remind us every day.
So
if I may. No?
Yes, John.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't know if anybody, if we don't have the answers to this question, it'd be nice to have them at council. But what's our rate of collection on our parking tickets?
We can get that documentation to you all by next Tuesday, but it's pretty significant. Debbie, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, recently looked at this, and I don't have the percentages in front of me, but I was surprised how good it is. We have a procedure in place with an outside service that for unpaid parking tickets, we submit the license tag number, and then they produce an address, and they get, then Laura sends out 30, 60, and 90-day delinquent notices. And those generally result in, well, there's a penalty involved. And when you continue to get those letters, people pay. So I don't think we have a huge non-collectible problem with parking tickets.
So I'm sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
Like what I think was alluding to Desiree, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I would like to find a way to expedite this increase in parking fees as quickly as possible. Whatever it takes, let's get it done. And let's start, showing our residents that we care for them. And let's collect some money to offset some of these costs for policing, for rescuing, and for public works picking up after them.
Yep, totally agree, Mayor. So Desiree, I know this is on to Jimmy Ward's comment. This is on as a discussion item. Do we want to change that to a motion tonight, or do we need to take it up at City Council on Tuesday?
I think it has to be by City Council.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So any other comments, thoughts, and Mayor, or I guess Desiree, this one would be on an accelerated time frame as well, expedited, just like the parking rates we just talked about, or does this go down a different path?
It has to go through the same approval process by going through 2 readings and a public hearing, and that is up to council.
Yeah. So Mayor, to your point, I think we put this one on the same fast track as the parking rates we just discussed and approved.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more question so we can wrap this up, if not possible.
Fire away.
Chief, is there a difference between the parking tickets that the BSO writes and the parking tickets that the police officers write? I know one of them's on a state, is the police officers on a state and the BSO is on a municipal? And if, first of all, that's my first part.
No, sir. So the parking ticket itself it's the same ticket issued either by a uniformed police officer or a BSO. The only difference you might have is if all of the tablets are taken, some people might handwrite a ticket, but they're all the same. There's not a state parking violation versus a city parking violation.
Okay, thank you.
Jimmy Ward.
May, is that, are we saying that we can't make a recommendation to full council about this issue tonight?
You could make a recommendation, you just cannot take action tonight.
So we can't vote.
You can vote as a recommendation for full council, and then the vote to change the parking fines would come next week.
To the mayor's point, would it be we'd still have to have a second reading of that after that full vote, correct?
Correct. So this would go, this would go to City Council next Tuesday as a recommendation for first reading, if that is what this committee wants to do. And then after that, we'd have to have a special meeting for second and a public hearing.
Okay. That's fine.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Anyone want to make that recommendation? And we'll take a vote on it or not?
No, I'm just gonna let it go.
I think it's moving forward already, Chairman.
All right.
Mayor, do you have a comment?
I'd like to get this thing going as quickly as possible. I can't say it strong enough.
Well, I will just add that Sanibel Island increased their parking fees from $50 to $200 during COVID. So consider that. I'm not saying we go there.
Over the bridge and to get over the bridge,
They're notoriously inhospitable, but.
Desiree, anything else on that? You good?
No, is there a motion?
No, there's not.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
We're going to take action Tuesday.
Tuesday, yep. Very good.
So I'm a little confused. There is no recommendation to City Council, so we're just we're putting consideration next Tuesday, consideration of increasing parking fines next Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Confusion averted.
And then to Mayor's point, we'll put it on the expedited process to get approval or implementation as fast as we can. Mayor, again, not putting words in your mouth, but
Tuesday would be a first reading, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
yes, sir.
is there any way we can do it faster?
No.
Desiree, I don't, based on your,
Fine.
Well, the
Another meeting.
without a recommendation from this group to council, it would not come as it would not be presented to council's first reading. It would just be included in the agenda under the report for Ways and Means.
I'll make a recommendation.
Mayor, fire away.
I make a motion that we bring this before council for first reading.
I'll second.
Desiree, do we need an amount or do we need?
Oh,
Well, I guess the ordinance that's going to be presented for first reading will just have a blank number, a blank, and
You
the
put in a
discussion
number.
would-
Yeah.
Mayor,
Okay.
you put in a number.
Or-
Jimmy? Mayor?
Mr. Chair, just to finalize it, to increase our parking fee from $50 to $100.
Parking
second.
fine.
Fine.
Thank you.
For the
Randy, that's your second?
Yeah.
Nicole, I know we probably did that a little bit out of order, but any further discussion or comments? Susan?
Should we also discuss increasing the fee for going over on the meter by doubling that as well? Or are we just talking about parking? What's the terminology, Desiree? Parking fines for?
It's the item on the agenda was broad enough to allow you all to have that discussion. Currently, it just says parking fines.
I would say we double parking fines across the board.
Hang on, Nicole, I see your hand. You need an amendment? Or...
Well, I mean, you can do it, and Desiree, you can correct me or if you want, but if you want to offer that, Councilmember Smith as a friendly amendment, Mayor Carroll could change it and Mayor and Councilmember Bell could approve it. And just take out the 50 to 100 and just say double parking fines across the board. Okay.
Susan,
Mayor,
are you making that as a friendly amendment?
I would like to make that as a friendly amendment. Thank you.
Mayor?
Second. Yeah, I agree.
Same.
Randy?
thank you.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you.
All right, Nicole, you want to roll call it?
Yeah, let me just write it down real quick.
All right, sorry.
Okay. Councilmember Popman,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan, Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Very strong eye.
duly noted. Chair Pounds,
Aye,
all in favor?
thank you. Is that in bold, Mayor? Is that what you want your
Very bold.
bold and big caps? Love it.
Sure.
Thank you. That was a good comeback. Our last item is also a discussion. However, I would like to, is the discussion about reducing the size of city council. I would like to make a motion, get a second, hopefully frame up with some comparative data, and then I'll open it up for discussion. So I'd like to make a motion to recommend to city council reducing the number of council members from 9 to 7 and prepare to include a referendum for our residents to have their voice heard on this topic for the November 2020 ballot.
I'll second.
A second. So let me frame this up just real quick. You've got a couple of pieces in your packet. Ron, you don't need to go to that. So this item was first discussed in the November 12th of 2019 Personnel Committee. And our city administrator stated that we would be bringing this back in the new year to have this conversation. Well, it's May, so it's a new year. We also talked about it in workshop 3 when we talked about our way forward or how we're going to do things differently going forward. So, you know, I'm fully aware this is not the solution for our budget, but there aren't too many ideas or initiatives that come along that have 3 critical components to it. reduce costs, increase efficiencies, and rethink our committee assignments, creating a forum for greater citizen involvement. Our annual cost for the mayor and council is about $150,000 annually and continues to go up, as you well know. So that's about $16,000 per member. So not just the $1,500 salary that keeps getting quoted around in various publications. In your packet, there's a comparison of 13 cities in our state with their number on council, how often they meet, and how they use citizens for committees. Of the 13, 10 have 7 council members, 2 have 5, and 1 has 9. If that particular data doesn't float your boat, I went to MASC database and pulled cities with population from 3,607 to 5,851. There's 21 cities in our state that fit in that range. So 12 have 7 council members, 2 have 5, and 2 others have 9. So logistically, in your packet, there is a timeline that Desiree and legal had put together. And if we were going to go forward and approve this, it seems like stars are aligned to me a bit. You know, if we put it on the referendum this fall, it's a presidential election, so we'd have good turnout. If residents approve, then make it effective for next fall. At that time, we have 5 current council members whose terms expire, so we could reduce the number then without having to draw straws or draw cards or roll dice or whatever you want to do. So it just feels like timing feels pretty good. So I will stop there and open it up for other comments. John.
Sure. Yeah, I was a little bit confused with the motion, but I think you clarified it there, because it feels like the motion is not necessarily to reduce council, but really to create a referendum.
That's correct. Thank you.
And I guess for me, what we're voting on tonight is, do we want to hear from our community and our residents and give them a voice to the structure of council? And I think because this has been a discussion that we've been having for several months, and we've had a chance to collect public sentiment, you know, it's not unanimous. There's folks that feel strongly one way and folks that feel strongly another, which to me seems like the perfect recipe for holding a referendum and hearing from our residents and letting the community tell us this is what we think we should be doing.
Other comments, thoughts, Mayor?
Mr. Chair, number one, you know, I look at Folly Beach, they have 9. If I'm not mistaken, they have 2,600 residents. We are a much larger community. I look at our council makeup, and every committee has to have 3 members. Because we need to this past year, we find ourselves very shorthanded because of employees that were played. It's very time consuming being a council member, very time consuming being the mayor. And we find ourselves meeting time and time again. And if it's about money, I mean, I give up the salaries. I mean, that means nothing to me. I give mine away anyway. But, you know, I look at the time commitments for each and every one of our council members, and I look at the letters that are coming in. It seems like there was a unified effort to send emails. But then we had a couple previous mayors send in emails talking about the history of Isle Palms and how we should maintain the history of Isle Palms. And I love tradition. I like the makeup of our council because we have some that vote seem unified one way. We have another group that's unified in another direction. And we have a couple of vote in different directions. So I think that diversity of council makeup is very good and is very healthy for our city.
Just one quick point of clarification. Folly has 7 council members, Mayor. Other comments?
Yeah.
Jimmy Ward.
I'm with a different number on the cost of the council members than you do, Mr. Chairman. I come up with the salary, workman's comp, retirement, FICA, and all other related costs. Insurance should be approximately $13,084 each. For each council member. I have never been a fan of council calling for referendums without knowing for sure if the people even want a referendum. I am much more in favor of a duly properly executed petition coming from 15% of the registered voters to see if they even want this or not. What is the rush? I know you mentioned, you said you started in December of 19, but that's only been 6 months. And the city was founded in 1953. I'm not going to get into the politics, and that's all that it is on this move. But I want to get into just to having the people tell us they want a referendum with a properly executed petition. And I'm not going to be in favor of voting for a referendum by 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 council members. Well, there's not going to be 9 because I'm not going to vote for it, by just us deciding that we're going to have a referendum when we haven't heard from the people. I think we need to hear from the people, at least 15% of the registered voters.
Rusty.
Thank you.
Yep, Rusty.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we have precedent on this island from the past that we did change the form of government at one time. We changed it from a strong mayor form to a council form. So that precedent had been set. And I think that was precipitated, if I remember correctly, by council at that time. So that precedent has been set there for that particular decision. Where I'm coming from with this is the questions have been raised. It was raised last year, first time that I'd heard it. We had it come up again in the budget workshop. It cleared through that. It ended up on this agenda tonight. And I think what we need to be thinking about is, do we move forward with this and just let our citizens, our voting citizens, let us know if this is a good idea or not? I know I, for one, when I ran on the platform and said, we're going to listen to the citizens. We're going to listen to what they have to say. And I appreciate if there was a petition out there that would be fine, but we don't have a petition. This has been raised. I think we're at a point now that we ought to be making a decision about whether we want to go ahead and put it on a referendum going forward with an up or down vote. I think it's important that we let the citizens know that we want to allow them to at least have a voice in a question that is this important for the history, for the future of the island. Thanks.
Kevin.
Yeah, just to piggyback Councilman Ward about the petition. So far, I've only seen 8 emails asking for us to go 9-7. And there's 9 of us that are going to make this decision. To me, that's not a big sample of this island. So that's why I go back to at least maybe doing this petition. And I guess I'm more of a traditionalist. We have 76 years of history. In the last 5 months, we've changed how committees are selected. Now we're going to change the amount of council people we're going to have. And back to Mayor Carroll, that's more time for us to be on committees. And I know somebody's going to say, well, we'll just stack committees with citizens, which is fine. But citizens aren't elected, they're appointed. And even though committees, we recommend things to full council, we as council people are on record stating our recommendations to that level. And so if the people don't like how I recommend things on real property or rec, then they can vote me off the island. They can't vote the citizens off the committees because they're appointed. And just one last comment is, we just went through COVID and we're probably still going through it. And we're going to get something like this again, or another emergency in our future. And isn't it a little bit better to have more minds and more opinions around the table to discuss this? I'm not for reducing at this point.
John.
Thank you, Chair Pounds. I wonder, Councilmember Popson, should we increase it to 11 then? That's my tongue-in-cheek response. Just a little good-natured jab. My question is actually related to the petition, and Desiree, I'm going to look to you. I'm not familiar with protocol. I don't know in recent years if referendums have gone through the petition process.
Yeah.
Can you describe to me, is that part of code, Or is that, can you just describe to me that typical part of the process? And then I've got a follow-up, if I may, once I understand the process.
Sure, Desiree.
Okay, so a referendum can be initiated two ways, either by a vote of council via ordinance or by a petition. And the residents of the island would initiate a petition. I believe it's a percentage. You have to have valid signatures. Councilmember Ward, I think you mentioned it earlier.
15.
Yes.
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 50,
Right. Yeah, you
15%
have to
of
have
the-
signatures, and like for the connector issue, we had a valid petition. We had well over 15% of the people that came forward and demanded a referendum, which city council gave them. And, you know, that's the true democracy there. That it was loud and clear that the people wanted to vote on this. I don't know if it's loud and clear that people want to vote on this. That's my point. And as far as like the 1990 change of government, I was heavily involved with that. But I'm sorry, I'm getting old, Rusty Streetman. I can't remember if we had a petition or not. I know it got on the ballot easily, but I seriously doubt that was just a council vote, because council was like really split at that time. I will go back and do some history on that, but you did bring up a point about that. But I'm pretty sure that was a petition too. All the major stuff that's happened out here has been by petition.
So can I ask my follow-up?
Yeah, I'm sorry, John.
understand?
Yep.
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
So my follow-up is I'm trying to get creative here, because I think we all want the same thing. It sounds like we want to hear from the residents. If the petition is the preferred approach to getting a referendum, and to me, it's sort of like it's one and the same. But it's the approach we were taking with the Pool Citizen Advisory Board as well, that we were getting a little bit of a feel for the community before we went to referendum. So we were essentially taking that approach. So I understand the rationale behind it. I wonder, because of the timing and I think Sheriff Pounds laid it out pretty well, getting on referendum this year, this is really the optimal year to do it. It seems like, if we start moving the balls in motion now, and if there's an effort to get a petition from some of those folks that have emailed us, maybe we can kind of do this in concert.
Susan, you have your hand up.
Mute.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I have mixed feelings about this, honestly. I would be open to discussion to have a better understanding of why we might want to do this, but I would really want to know a lot more about how this would be translated organizationally. I think that to say that we've had to present it as if we've had been looking at this issue for 6 months is a little bit disingenuous. I know that the Personnel Committee did discuss it at one of their meetings, and we briefly mentioned it at a budget meeting recently. But we really, for what would be a significant shift in the way that we govern, we really have not given much attention to it. And I also feel like the rush to put this on the ballot is a little bit backwards. I think there should be thoughtful conversation by council. We should be the ones who have the best understanding of how the council structure, since we live it. And I would want to arrive at something before we make this kind of change that had unanimous or near unanimous support from council. I've heard significant concerns from some of our senior members of council, and also we've heard from past mayors. So like I said, I'm open to the discussion. I would prefer that we bounce it back to the Personnel Committee to look at more thoughtfully and come to us with a better understanding of what they think it would be the best way to go down to a 7-member council, and then consider it with public input before we go ahead and put it on a ballot and make that vote tonight. So that about covers it for me.
Randy?
Yeah, a couple things. Councilmember Popson alluded to change the way that we do committees for the first time. Just a reminder, it was Councilmember Ward back in 90 or 91 that submitted a slate in opposition the first time. So I take a little bit of exception to that. And I think we need to step back, The thing that's probably been the most disturbing to me in this process is bringing politics into it. I'm hearing from the mayor that, these people vote this way, these people vote this way. Frankly, I hadn't had a conversation until it came up with anyone about reducing. I'm probably one of the least likely candidates to run again. In fact, I'm not going to. And I look at it and go, our residents have been asking. This is not new. We haven't had a lot of discussion as a council. Totally agree. I will offer this, looking at this as a parallel process with strategic planning, you're not going to have a definitive structure come out of the personnel committee, right? It's just not going to happen. You're going to find through the strategic plan process, there's going to be a lot of recommendations that come out of that. They're not going to be here before November. They're not going to be here in all likelihood as an implementable plan before the next election. And honestly, I'm with Councilmember Streetman on this entirely. We ran on the basis of listening to the residents. And I don't see the harm in it. I mean, we put it on a referendum. By the way, if the community decides 9 is the right number, that's fine. If it's 11, it's fine, right? But I cannot understand how we think that we're smarter than the entire community and that the 9 of us should make a decision based on history and how long this government has been working the way that it has. And I will tell you, sitting here for 2.5 years, we're not efficient. We are not efficient at all. We spend way too much time managing the managerial duties of the city as a council instead of acting as a board of directors.
Other mayor.
Back to 9 versus 7. And again, I look at the committee size. I've never worked so hard in my life.
For so little.
We're doing right now. And I look at our previous mayors who've chimed in on this thing and said this thing has worked for 67 years. Why are we changing now? And to me, it's almost, as I think Councilmember Ward said, there was 8 or 9 emails, and it seemed almost like a concerted group. That's not a big outpouring of people, but when you get ex-mayors chiming in on something like this, that's history. And I like the fact that we have a mixture of council members who have been here for a long time and then new people who've been here. So everybody's learning from one another. I think it's a great way of running a city because it's passing on island history. Thank you.
Ryan.
Great. Hopefully we can wrap this up real quick, but just a couple things. It was first presented to us as a budgetary item, budgetary thing. It may have been discussed in personnel, but there really wasn't any report made to council on it. It was basically brought up is trying to think of outside of the box thinking to reduce the cost, reduce expenses to council and to the city. And that was brought in. And obviously there is a cost savings if we're to go through and do it. If that's what we want to do, then we can go ahead and make that happen. But now it seems like that goal line is moving to something else, and it's not really cost, it's more efficiency, I think is what somebody is trying to say, and it'd be more efficient to have less people.
Maybe.
And there was some discussion that we're not listening to the residents if we don't move forward with this. And like I said, we've only had, less emails than there are people on this screen to ask about reducing the size of government. But we have listened to our residents. And when we were first elected, we had a number of community forums and went through and listed everything that our residents wanted, whether it was drainage improvements, whether it was increased parking, whether it was to, change, the rec center or add amenities or decrease amenities. I don't recall any one of those meetings coming up and saying they want to decrease the size of city council. So we've had discussion with our residents, and that has never been brought up until this past, last few weeks. And so I'm not sure what the impetus was for it, what's driving it. It used to be cost. It's definitely not cost now. And you say it's not politics, but it's going down that road. So I think everybody's had enough discussion. I'd like to call for the question.
All right. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second. Nicole, you want to do a quick roll call on that? those two discussions? Sorry, Susan.
I'd like to make a motion that we send this to Personnel Committee for review.
I'm sorry, just a point of order.
Can't do it.
There, when you call for the question, you have to vote on the motion to call for the question and end discussion.
Okay, sorry.
May I have the motion repeated, please?
Well, we're calling the question right now to discuss
Calling
that.
the question.
Discussion.
Okay, I understand.
All right, Nicole, you want to do roll call on just calling for the questions?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Nay.
Councilmember Bell,
Nay.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Chairman Pound.
Aye.
Motion to call the question passes 7-2.
Appreciate the motion.
Kevin, you keep going in the dark over there in your motion.
Yeah.
Lights.
I got to keep moving. Sorry.
That's all right. So now back to our, sorry, Randy. Jimmy Ward.
The original motion, Councilmember Ward, was to recommend to City Council to reduce the size of City Council from 9 to 7 and include it as a ballot referendum in the 2020 general election.
Who made the motion?
Councilmember
did.
Towns did, and it was seconded by Councilmember Bell.
Thank you.
We ready?
Sure.
Councilmember Popson,
Nay.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Nay.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Nay.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Aye. Councilmember Ward,
Nay.
Mayor Carroll,
Nay.
Chair Pound.
Aye.
The motion fails 4 to 5, 4 in favor, 5 against.
Thank you. So I know this is a long meeting, folks, but we need to go to executive sessions. So real quick, miscellaneous business. Our next meeting date is 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June 16th. Let me read this executive session real quick, and then we'll talk about procedurally how we flip from one to the other. We're going to do a little bit different tonight. So in accordance with section 30-4-70 of the Freedom of Information Act, to receive legal advice regarding pending litigation involving short-term rental online businesses. Upon returning to open session, the committee may take action on matters discussed in executive session. So for council members, we're going to leave this meeting. Ron sent you an email about 5:30 that giving you the executive session call-in ID and password. So public, residents, staff, you can stay on this line and we'll come back and join it when we finish the executive session. Council members, though, if you will leave this session and go sign in to the executive session numbers, okay?
Will do.
Oh, Ryan, you're on mute.
We need to vote on going into executive session.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Councilmember Pounds made a motion. I need a second.
Aye. Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
Did we lose Councilmember Moy?
We did. I
Yeah,
think
but-
he's already logging in, but I think you'll have
He's
a
a
quorum.
rule follower, man. Come on. So
Well,
do a roll call. Go ahead, Nicole.
Thank you. Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
all in favor minus Councilmember Moy not voting.
Thank you, Ryan, keeping me honest. All right, council, if you'll leave the meeting, again, residents, just stay here and we'll come back and join you when we finish.
Will do. Thank you.